do the verse, or should I just do
That would be.
Yeah. Maybe some water. Jaya Radhadesh Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janapalapa Giridhadhari Gopi Janapalapa Gopi Janapalapa Giridhadhari Jaya Gopi Janapalapa Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Omaginatrumandasya Janatana Salakiya Jaksusmritam Janatasmi Shri Guru Charana Padma. By the grace of Guru, we find Krishna.
Can you bring mic a little closer to you?
So I will attempt to bestow the glories, the story, the epic, the saga, the miracles, the wonderment of Srila Prabhupada. We are so fortunate to have the best spiritual master in the world. People ask me, what quality of Prabhupada do you like the most? It's so hard to say because he has so many qualities, and when he did it, each moment, each gesture was perfect within itself. Each expression was whole. When I photographed so many because his expressions would change, and each one was beautiful. Of the qualities that are so many, I think his mercy, his kindness, his compassion stands out. We know the story on the Jaladuta when he had the heart attack. He would write every day in his journal, and yet there was 4 days with no entry into the journal because he had the heart stroke. He prayed. He didn't know whether he was going to live or die. Any of you who have had a heart attack knows that it's not fun. Most people would go back to beloved Vrindavan. He even told me that he missed Vrindavan, but because he wanted to carry out the orders of his Guru Maharaj Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that he went on. But sometimes he missed Vrindavan in India so much that with his gold-pointed Bengali shoes that went up like that, he would go to the shipping office where the ships were. He told me this personally. And he would look at the schedules of the boats just to get this out of his system. So there was a man there, and he liked the Swamiji, and he said, "Swamiji, you're looking at the schedule, but are you going back?" And he said, "No. No, I'm just doing this like acupuncture, to get a thorn takes out a thorn. You confront something, a problem, and in that way it's vanished." When he came to us in San Francisco, when I saw him for the first time, it appeared like his feet were not touching the ground, like Yudhisthira's chariot. And from the very beginning, he held his head up high, and he's looking into Vaikuntha. He's on the planet, but he's not of this earth. He's transcendental. I had heard about him. I had met, by the grace of Krishna, Jamuna Devi, who's a great devotee. And she told me that she had gone to New York to her sister's wedding. Janaki and Mukunda were getting married. And Janaki is Jamuna's sister. And so this is a somewhat humorous story, and because we were somewhat street smart, we were aware of what goes on in the world, and we had to be careful. And so when Jamuna went to New York, she met the Swami, but at first she was not sure about him. When I saw him, I fell in love immediately, but she was careful of this old man. So he said, it's the custom in India for the sister to cook for her sister's wedding. Now, he transcendentally saw into each of our hearts, and he engaged us in a way that was natural, not artificial. Bhakti yoga is not looking at a clock, when do I go home? It's 24 hours. And he sees what's in the heart, and he engages us. And of course, Jamuna was the best cook. I was a photographer. Samarchandra was the carpenter. Each of us had different duties. Some were painters. Govinda Dasi Gorsundar. So somehow or other, he always not only looked into our hearts, but he read our minds. So many times the first time the first time I even changed the story, the truth, a little bit, he busted me, he arrested me. He said, he read my mind. And this happened, so I stopped trying to bend the truth with him. He'd see inside. So, she starts cooking, and she touched someplace. He said, go wash your hands. Then 99.99% of the people who cook always taste it. This is what cooks do. So she tasted, and he said, well, this is special cooking for Krishna, and we don't taste it as we cook. So she thinks, well, this man from India is a little strange. Go wash your hands, he said. About an hour later, she said, Swamiji, can I go smoke a cigarette? Go wash your hands. She thought that was the first mantra. Wash, wash, hands, hands. But there's more to the story which isn't known, but I was sharing with my friend Dina here, that still she was a little weary of this man. And in his kindness, he saw she was somewhat tired, and he said, why don't you go lie down on the bed in the next room? And she thought, oh, I don't know about this man. But soon, and it happened to us all, she saw that, no, he's really not having any agenda, that he was really a sweet, kind Swamiji. And we all wanted the Swamiji. In the 60s, we were following various traditions, and I had met many mentors. And when she came back to San Francisco, then she was very happy to meet him. And so we wanted the Swami, and he came in our midst, and he was everything we wanted as a Swami. He was jolly, he was kind, he instructed us in such a beautiful way. He's high on the mountain, seeing our struggles. He could have pulled us up, but he wanted us to have a strong foundation. So he fed us like children just as much as we could take. Very nice to see you again. So now I will paint the picture. We're very fortunate to have this wonderful place. But when we first began, we had to have our temples in other buildings that were not specified as temples. It's very nice now that we can even build temples so that the deity room is functional. At that time, it was simply a storefront on Frederick Street. So he showed us how to build an altar. He didn't demand a vyasasana. There were no mridungas, no kartals. He would sit on the altar and play a bongo drum. And the kirtans were long and beautiful. There would be people playing violins and kettle drums and higher griva made trumpets out of kelp seaweed. And he would sit on the altar, no deities, and he would chant in the beautiful honey voice, and we would chant. Then he taught us about prasadam personally, teaching us all how to cook, and teaching us the rules slowly. For instance, there was a Mahapurush from New York, and in Montreal, he said, Swamiji, I'm cooking in a restaurant that cooks meat. Oh, but again, he forgave us. He was so forgiving, so understanding, so open-minded, yet non-compromising, but he did it in such a beautiful way. He said, oh, you're working in a restaurant where they cook meat. Well, a one-eyed uncle is better than a blind uncle. Again, forgiving his situation. But Swamiji, sometimes they make me cook the meat. Oh, that is too blind. So he was giving us the rules and regulations, but in that beautiful way. There was a picture of Lord Jesus in the temple, and he allowed that. There was a Native American totem pole with eagles and hawks and owls. He allowed that. He didn't move it. Although, sometimes when he ate oranges, he would hit the American eagle in the nose with the orange peels, and it made me laugh. He constantly made me laugh. For instance, here's the American eagle, but to Prabhupada, he said one day, why is your American symbol a buzzard? A buzzard. And of course I laughed because America has its talents in everything, like a buzzard. It's not noble like an American eagle, a buzzard. So he sat among us, no Vyasa-san, just on a cushion, and men and women were just his children. So many of the photos that I rendered, there's Jamuna, there's Janaki sitting right by his side. In fact, Janaki had a very awesome relationship with Prabhupada. It was very, very friendly and very not respectful but loving. And sometimes he would tease us, and he said, Jamuna's a better devotee than you, to Janaki. No, he would tease us. I was the photographer. And he said, why are you photographing me so much? Why don't you go photograph people who are chanting in the park? Well, because I love you, Swamiji, and also, as I said, each expression was so full. So to tease me, he said, there's a superstition in India that if you photograph someone, it shortens their life. So I stopped abruptly. And he says, what do you think of that, Gurudas Ji? I regained my composure and I said, it's not how long we live, it's what we do with our life that's important. And then he looked, oh, what a nice, intelligent pupil I have. And this was the thing. He was feeding us by hand and teaching us Lord Chaitanya prayers on a little slate board one morning. He was teaching us everything. But soon, we tried to make some kartals in the foundry. Eventually, a mridanga drum came. We had no movement. We had no elders to teach us. We had the Swamiji. But we also had each other. And it was based on love and trust. And this was something that we got from the Swami. He trusted us, we trusted him. He loved us, we loved him. But he would use these words, love and trust. Jai, Radha Gopinath ki Jai, the Lord of the Gopis. And the Gopis attract his heart as well in this hide-and-seek game with Krishna. Then there was some more devotees. Some came from New York. Ray Rama, Hayagriva, Rabinda Swarup, Haridas. Haridas was the first painter. And just to show you our ignorance, how he had to teach us, Haridas was the one who brought the totem pole. But he also painted a picture of the Panchatattva, and for some reason he thought they were women. And he painted them topless. Yes, I didn't make this up. It's stranger than fiction, this great saga, this great miracle. So the Swami comes in, and I heard this many times afterwards, but this is the first time I saw him go, and then he calls Haridas, and then the painting goes out. Boop, boop, boop. And the next day, it's the Panchatattva. So. This is the kind of thing that happened. So, slowly we were getting a taste for Krishna consciousness, and it was very pleasurable in the 60s. There's free love, free everything. There was a free store, you could get free clothes. But why would we go and join this elderly man? Because he was so sweet and so charming and also adventurous. Like the time, well, I'll tell that later, but he was fun to be around because he would push the envelope, he would say things that were wonderful, and he would take us on great adventures. So Samarshund and Malati got initiated, and I was there. And at that time, the Swamiji was coming 3 times a week to the temple, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And sometimes we would see him on Tuesdays, but a lot of the time he was translating. While we slept, he was writing. So then this initiation ceremony of Samarshund and Malati was very nice. He actually made a fire in a storefront temple. Well then, a little while, I had already met Jamuna before I became a devotee, and this is nice. It's really good if people are going to get married in Krishna consciousness, if they have a chance to actually meet their mates, their partners before. Sometimes arranged marriages work, but we were already friends. So I had a hidden grove in Golden Gate Park, and I was reading the Penguin book of the Bhagavad Gita from cover to cover. And she knew where this hidden grove was, and she came in and she proposed marriage with the most unromantic proposal of all times. As I said, we each had our different services, so there was a woman, Harsha Rani. It even sounds harsh. And she says, Harsha Rani says if we live together, we have to get married. Oh. Well, I was a beatnik hippie. I don't know if I wanted to get married, but okay, I'll think about it. But who should marry us? We had a friend who was a Franciscan friar. We had a Buddhist monk friend, and the Swamiji. I think the Swamiji's the best one. Okay, so Swamiji, we would like to get married. Oh, but first you must get initiated. But he said it so kindly, not harsh. Oh. Well, I kind of had an idea of what this meant, but as I said, there was no movement. And we just had kind of an idea of rules and regulations. And again, he's so understanding. For instance, our god sister Kausalya Devi was part of Timothy Leary's group that did LSD. So he said, what are the 4 regulations? And she told them, and he said, and no LSD. So, okay, initiation. But I wasn't sure, and then this born-again Christian shows up at my friend's house, because now Harsharani says we can't live together, so I was living across town. I went across town. And I was saying, I'm not sure if I want to get initiated, and all the devotees were on the telephone, and it was a family, and they really wanted me to get initiated, and this is the love and trust. This is the family. We're growing together. We didn't take anybody for granted once they got initiated. We relished their association. We wanted their success. They wanted my success. So they were lamenting. Well, Guru Das is resisting. And then this born-again Christian shows up, and he's talking against the idea of Krishna consciousness. However, this is really Krishna's trick, because he was so obnoxious that it pushed me closer to Krishna. Who wants to go with somebody like that, who's so critical and bile in his liver, you know? So, okay, I'm going to get initiated, and I hear over the phone, all the devotees, oh, that's what it was like. It wasn't just, another number. In our ignorance, or Janaki's ignorance, she made fruit box wood instead of real wood. They carry fruit in it, and it's wood that's just processed together. Not like the fine wood chips we have from the carpenters that run the heating plant here. The vision here is beautiful, and you're carrying it on, and we'll continue, and we'll evolve, and we'll even be more successful. But the basic vision that you've done is very wonderful. So this wasn't like those wood chips. This was fake wood. And then fake ghee. Instead of real butter, to save some money, Janaki bought margarine, oleo. You laugh, because you can tell what happened just by your intelligence. This is called inference. You didn't see it, but you can tell by the ingredients what's going to happen. And so the Swamiji showed us how to make a very strong fire pit in the storefront. And he, with his golden lotus fingers, he made a little tent of the wood, and then he put ghee on it, oleo on it, and it sputtered, and then burst into flame. Later on, at the marriage, the same thing happened, and he said, "This is like your marriage, it'll sputter at first and then burst into flame." Now, years later, he was in Vrindavan, but he asked me to perform the marriage of Yadavar and Vishaka. I performed 3 marriages for him. And the same thing happened somewhat. And I thought, oh yeah, well, even though it was 30 years before, he would remember this. He sometimes did remember, but he said, "How was the marriage?" And I said, "Well, like the fire, it sputtered at first and burst into flame." And I was like, oh yeah. And then no expression. Every time that happened, when I got a little proud, this is what happens. Once he asked it was like a big Bedouin tent at the Kumbh Mela, and we're all gathered, and the first thing he said, our Hansaduta is having some difficulty in Germany. Why is nobody helping him? It was that simple, not airfare, not mileage. One of our families having difficulty, go help, and 2 people left. It was that simple. So then he turns to us and he says, "How do you know Krishna is God?" I said, "You told us." He said, "They can say I am old man." Somebody said the Bhagavad Gita says so. They can say it's just a book. You know Krishna is God by the ecstasy you feel. And that's what's kept us going for 50 years, 40, 30, 20. The ecstasy, and then many people in India like to do English proverbs. He said, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. So a year later, in Philadelphia, everybody's on a morning walk, and they were always trying to get close to Prabhupada. They kind of subtly, passively aggressive, elbow each other out. I didn't have to do that because he gave me so much association. Once, the first time my foot was in the door to meet Swamiji, I would come so much that his assistants would say, "Oh, there's Guru Dasa again, don't let him in." But when I'd go, Krishna arranged that they were in the kitchen. "Oh, Guru Dasa is there again." But he never kicked me out. So much association. And if I wanted to be close to him on the morning walk, we see so many pictures of him walking with his troops. If I wanted to be close to him, I'd just take the tape recorder. Oh, Gurdas has the tape recorder. But I didn't have to be close to him. I was back there. "Oh, how do you know?" He stops. "How do you know Krishna's God?" And everybody stopped so they wouldn't step on him. Somebody said, "You told us." "They will say I am old man." I step up. "You know Krishna is God by the ecstasy you feel. The proof of the pudding's in the eating." "No, Bhagavad Gita says so." So here's our time, place, circumstance. That is a way, if we don't understand something, that is a methodology to understand it better. What is the time? What is the place? What is the circumstance? It may change. In Africa, you take off a shirt. In Alaska, you put it on. So now there's the initiation, and there's a third devotee there, Shama Devi, Hayagriva's wife, beautiful devotee. And so before, because I was chanchala and not sure, when do you want us to get initiated? Tomorrow? Yeah, because he didn't want me to go away. So now we're initiated, and there was one sari and one dhoti in the whole movement. And so, when do you want us to get married? Tomorrow. So now I had Hayagriva's dhoti, and we tied it together. And give me my dhoti back. No, Hayagriva, it has to be tied together for 7 days. So again, the fire burst into flame, but there was a third person at the marriage. Now, we were trying to get Prabhupada's visa, immigration visa, so Dayananda and Nandarani said, well, we'll adopt you as our son. And he said, yes, but they will say, what are you doing with such an old son? So that won't work. So then Allen Ginsberg said, well, if you get, I don't think he said, somebody said, if you get married, you can get your visa. And he had to say, but sannyasis don't do that. He had to teach us this. We didn't know. So now the third person at our wedding was a girl who wanted to marry Prabhupada. Well, not only that, she's what's called a space cadet. Somebody who was so oblivious to what's going on from probably heavy drug usage. And so she had a baby in her lap, and the baby's head was hitting the floor. Yeah, your mother's, you see that. Well, about half the congregation that day were people that just took mescaline. And mescaline shows many colors, bright colors, bright colors. So they were looking at the fire. They didn't care about the Swami or me or Jamuna. They were just into the fire. But even the mescaline people saw this woman's baby hitting the floor. And Jamuna and I are going, you know, like that. Well, the Swami's transcendental, but then he saw, and immediately he says, pick up your baby. She was a space cadet, but she goes, oh, she's a mother too. And oh, she realized this isn't so good. Then the Swamiji looks around and he smiles his oceanic smile and says, we'll be strong, baby. That's the kind of thing, and we laughed. So now, and also, in the initiation, he gave me a name that's corresponding with my legal name, which is R. And everybody had names corresponding to their legal names. But I don't remember what the R name was. I did like that he was chanting on my... We had big red beads. We didn't have Tulsi beads. We strung these big red beads across the whole room, 108 knots. And some people had red and yellow and green and red. And he just tolerated this. Later he told us about Tulsi. I'm painting the picture to show you what it was like and how he slowly built this movement, but there was no movement. So, Then he told us about Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda. And so, one day he said that I want you to go into the temple and stay the whole day from morning till 6 at night and chant japa, chant kirtan, and he gave us a manuscript of teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And he said, read from this. So we chanted, we read. But now around noon, midday, Jayananda, the great Jayananda Thakur, and Jivananda look over to me and they go with their heads, let's go out of the temple. Now Jayananda really is a great devotee. He was so selfless, he's caring for everybody. I would go to the market with him and people would say, hi Jim, would you like some produce for your temple? He was a man of the people. He was not puffed up. He was very real, but hardworking, hardworking. What an example. And he was actually the first president of the San Francisco Temple, and I was vice president, whatever that meant, title, but still. So he looks over, and then Jivananda, a very nice devotee from Texas, looks over, and they both go like this. Let's go out of the temple. Well, I told them, I said, the Swamiji told us not to go out of the temple. And you two Anandas against one Das. Okay, two Anandas will take one Das out of the temple, but we may get in trouble because the Swamiji's told us to stay in the temple. But our idea, they said, let's go and chant for the Swami outside the temple. So we took the bongo drums and the clunky kartals, Jai Radha Gopinath. And there, it was an apartment that Jamuna and I lived in, but we gave it to the Swamiji. He was living above the temple for a while, but now he lived in this other place. And so we went and chanted for the Swamiji, and he came to the second floor window, and we saw him, and he went like this. I told you, Anandas, we're in trouble. In school, sometimes I was a bad boy, and they took me to the principal. You know, you have to go to the principal's office. Well, this was, uh-oh. I mean, we had never been chastised by the Swamiji, but we didn't want to chance that. And he told us. So we started to go down the hill, crestfallen, with our heads hanging. And Upendra comes running out and he says, Swamiji wants to see you. Uh-oh. Now I'm going to the principal's office again. But this is the Adi Guru's, Jagat Guru's office. This is a little bit even different. This is the real principal. This is Adi. So we get up there. Oh, Upendra says, we said he told us to go away. He told us to go away. Upendra says, no, in India that means come here, come here. Oh. So we go there and he's smiling, his big oceanic smile. Lord Chaitanya has given you the intelligence to chant outside the temple as well as inside the temple. Chaitra Guru. Listen to it. If Chaitra Guru, if it comes into you, your intuition, a lot of the time it's correct. So, he said, now you're chanting outside the temple, and this is called Harinam Sankirtan. So please do this every day. So that was the origin of Harinam Sankirtan in the West. And Vishnu Jan, Jamuna Tamal, Murli Dar, beautiful kirtans, Harinam. So he's introducing us. Now to show you about Chaitra Guru, on the way to India, we were in Egypt. And it was this, I'll tell that later, but it was a very old, two-propeller plane with the cockpit just, there was just a blanket, no door. It was a very, very funky air service, very not great. And so to make sure that the baggage was transferred in Egypt to India, Prabhupada put me in charge of the party. There were 17 of us, and I was sitting with Giriraj. So I went in to make sure all the baggage was going to India. So I noticed all over the airport there was big photos of their president Nasser. Big. And black all over because he was assassinated the day before. Now, I remember when President Kennedy was assassinated, and everybody in America remembers that because he was beloved. And so people in Egypt were very distraught. They were actually going like that and crying, and the whole airport had this atmosphere of mourning. Giriraj and the other 16 devotees had no idea about this, and they went out where the airplanes are and started chanting Hare Krishna, jumping up and down. Now, Prabhupada told us to take a lot of equipment to India. Irons, slide projectors. I had a new camera, Super 8. And I'd like to photograph, I'd like to make films. So I'm setting the scene of Egypt on the way to India. So there's big Nasser all over the airport in black, and you can get the idea that people are mourning. And then I say, and there's Giriraj and Jamuna and the other devotees, Dinanath, they're chanting. And they're chanting, and there's the airplanes. Oh, and look, there's some soldiers running at the devotees with knives, bayonets on the end of their rifles. So now, it's funny because you see the film, Yadabara has it, that there's the devotees chanting, there's the soldiers, and then the camera goes boop, 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 boop. It's sort of on my arm. Now, Chaitra Guru enters my heart. The soldiers are running towards the devotees. What is this, terrorism? You know? And they're running. So Chaitra Guru enters my heart, and I said, we're singing the praises of President Nasser. We're singing the praises of President Nasser. And the soldiers stopped running, and they surrounded us with their rifles and knives up, and they became our guard. And they guarded around us. So chant the President Nasser's glories as long as you want. So many times Chaitra Guru saved us. So this is one time. So then, we did the mantra rock dance with all these great groups. Moby Grape and Grateful Dead and Big Brother Holding Company and Quicksilver Messenger Service. And they all donated their time. We raised $2,000. And Samashunda Prabhupada said, how much have you raised? $2,000. What were the expenses? I'm not sure. And Prabhupada taught him accounting, debit assets. And he had an adage, so many adages, short quips. He said, accounting means putting it down immediately. That was accounting. Put it down immediately. Write it down. It was a glorious dance. Allen Ginsberg was there, Timothy Leary, Swami Kriyananda with a veena, someone who thought he was the mayor of San Francisco with a top hat and a sash that said San Francisco. He wasn't. Sam Mukunda was wearing Merlin the Magician robe, and Sam Mukunda was wearing an Afghani shepherd's robe that smelled like sheep, and I was wearing a samurai-type robe that Yamuna made for us. So this is the scene that the Swamiji was tolerant. And when he came in, it was like the Red Sea parted. The great Guru came, and he spoke, and everybody cheered. He spoke about the benefits of the Hari Mahamantra to the people, and they cheered him. So we were being very accepted now, because people who would go on trips all night, psychedelic trips, they could come to the Krishna temple for a nice breakfast and a nice way to re-enter, a nice way to come down from your trip. And so it was known. And then he was teaching us prasadam. And Madhavisa and the brahmacharis loved prasadam. Madhavisa came from Morning Star Ranch. This ranch we went to, Tamal came from there, Ribadinanda, Madhavisa, and Vishnu Janam. They all lived on this ranch, and we went up there with Prabhupada, and they came back. And Madhavisa went to Big Sur with a picture of Krishna I gave him, and I taught him how to offer it food. So he liked prasadam. And for the brahmacharis, it was very austere. We were sleeping on the floor or on a dhoti or whatever. It was somewhat austere. So Madhavisa said, "Oh, I just love prasadam," and the brahmacharis did. And so they would try to tell what was in the pots. They'd sit at the front where the pots of prasadam were. And, maybe that's all. You know, this was their game. And we had 2 long mats to feed people, but it was so popular that outside the temple on the street, people were really, it was that many people, so many people, that they were outside on the street. So now Madhavisa and the brahmacharis went to the front so they can get prasadam first. But Jamuna decided to make individual plates and feed the people outside first, so that they had to pass all the prasadam to everybody, and they really wanted it, but they were yogis, trying to be yogis, so then they finally got prasadam. So next week, Madhavisa and the brahmacharis go outside, and guess what Jamuna decided to do? Feed the people in front first. Chaitra Guru told me to call Madhavisa, and I didn't hesitate because I understood now. Don't hesitate. I called him, and we spoke for 20 minutes, and that night he left the planet. That night. He said, "I can't, I'm tired now, Guru Das. Thank you for calling." But he left the planet. I'm going to jump ahead just to show you what I mean about unpredictability and how Prabhupada has a vision, and it's not always shastric, it's not always formal. I wasn't there, but one time a microphone fell down, and apparently Prabhupada took somebody's Brahmin thread and tied up the microphone. That's not in the Shastra. You don't see the Panchatattva doing that. That's his... It was so wonderful. What is he going to do next? So this is an example. Now Madhavisa is now a sannyasi. And I think he was married 2 or 3 times. So he did like women. So this was really, he was being very strict. And we were doing deities in Jayapur for Krishna Balaram Temple for years. We were going there, Jamuna, Bhardraj, myself, Prabhupada sends Madhavisa to see the final touches of the deities, to do the final, goes there. He's a new sannyasi. Prabhupada sends him there alone with Jamuna, new sannyasi. And then he says, and we had to ride in the rickshaw, and she was big and the rickshaw was small, and she was spilling all over me, and I tried to put my tongue to between us. But after 2 days, gender didn't matter, because she was so determined. And Prabhupada knew that even though it was sannyasi, but that's not Shastric. I'm showing you his open-mindedness. So Malati was the one who could get things. She could procure things. She somehow or other got Jerry Garcia of the Grateful Dead to give us a stove with a grill so we could make chapatis. He gave us a stove. So the Swami's above the temple and he's looking down out of the window. There's devotees who live in this apartment now. Right now, I'm doing Prabhupada tours in San Francisco and we can go into that actual apartment. And Mukunda and Janaki live down the hall. And so he's looking, and Malati sees this person in a truck delivering milk, butter, so many things. And there's this store at the corner, and the man's taking some milk into the store. And as soon as he went in the store, Malati ran to the truck and took a whole big flat of butter, maybe 24, 48 butter. And she hardly can carry it like that. I see her going to the temple, and then she goes in the temple and puts the big wooden flat up, and all the butter we put in the refrigerator. About an hour later, somebody says, Swamiji wants to see you, Malati. Oh, she puts on the one sari in the movement. And she goes before him. So you have stolen the butter? She became protoplasmic butter herself. You should not steal. Other people's property is like stool. We shouldn't steal. It's Krishna's property. We should not steal. But if you have to steal, then butter is the best thing because Krishna is called Makanchur. And then he told her the story about Krishna and Balaram stealing the butter, giving it to the monkeys. And he told her the story. So you see how he forgave us? He taught us, but he forgave us. He forgave us. And because he forgave us, we still didn't learn right away. And there was a store in India. We thought, oh, things from India. The Kurt is from India. It must be spiritual, you know. Oh, it's from India. So there was a store, and Malati saw something that looked like from India. And so in America, there's a saying, the 5-finger discount, which means you just five-finger discount. So and because we were so close with the Swamiji, we would ask very childlike questions. Like, for instance, I asked him, can we wear Nrsinga masks on Harinam? Can we put a Nrsinga head and wear it on Harinam? Yes. And then he told me a Charles Chaplin story. I'll tell it tomorrow or tonight to say why we could wear Lord Nrsinga heads on Kirtan. So she says, Swamiji, is this from India? And suddenly the great Swamiji is bowing down before this Lord Jagannath. He said, are there any more? Yeah, I think there's a yellow one and a white one, maybe a red one. And go get them. 10-finger discount. So then, Samashunda, can you carve these? Yes. Now, New York wanted the Swamiji back. They were more rules and regulations, and they were head and we were heart. They wanted Swamiji back, so I said, Samashunda, carve these very slowly. But Swamiji sped him up, and then he told us about the Jagannath festival. And we didn't make carts back then, but the next door was the Diggers, and they had a truck. So he drew a little altar on the truck. And so that was the first Rath Yatra. And so, as I say, next door was these Hell's Angels, this motorcycle gang. And they were very tough, and they'd break things. But also they were feeding people, and we were feeding people. And so they actually liked us, even though they were very tough. And one night, after the kirtan, then the Swami would speak, but not very long. Most kirtan, and then very simple. No movement yet, no books. Well, Srimad Bhagavatam, but so suddenly I hear on the wall, Guru Das. Now there's a Vyasa-san. Now there's a Vyasa-san. Guru Das, what is that? I don't know. Go see. So I knew it was the Hell's Angels, and I'm thinking, why me? You know, why did he call me? And so a lot of times I said, why me? Yeah, why me? Why did he put me on the television program next to him? Well, I don't know. Grace. So I go next door. I have my bead bag. He's got a knife. I've got my sandals. He's got a motorcycle. You know. He had a swastika tattooed in his cheek. He had no teeth, huge. I said, now I would say, could you party less hardy? But then I said, well, the Swamiji's going to speak, and we heard the banging on the wall, so possibly could you not bang on the wall? But the huge guy said, I was banging on the wall, man, because I like your singing. When I hear you singing like that, I like to bang in the wall. Well, there's a saying in America, knock yourself out. Go knock yourself out. So, okay, I said, okay, well, that's great, but now the Swami's going to speak, so could you possibly not bang on the wall? He said, yeah, man, your Swami's the heaviest, which is meaning deep. They like the Swami. At the mantra rock dance, we made them, my idea, we made them our security guards because we were afraid that they would wreck the dance. So if the Hell's Angels were our security guards, they would cancel that equation out. And it became such a popular thing that the Hell's Angels were hired to do this, and the decay of material nature, eventually they actually killed some people at Altamont. But it was a good idea. So I guess I'll stop here. There's much more. Swamiji gets a Vyasa-san when Lord Jagannath came on the altar. Little Kartamashi came, another Krishna. I'll continue tonight. And I thank you very much.
After Gora, we continue. 7:30.
Ja. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.
Et effectivement, je peux lire le poster de la mutuelle sociale du Luxembourg, à la Catulaire.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna